There it is.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to April's Sharks for Kids Marine Science Hangout. Very excited to have you along with us today. My name is Joe Grabowski. I'm a grade 8 teacher in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, but I also have a really cool job as the Director of Education for Sharks for Kids. And those of you who are new to Sharks for Kids, we're trying to create the next generation of ocean and shark advocates through education, outreach, and adventure. And we're encouraging students to use their voices and powers of persuasion to help protect our sharks and the health of our ocean. So we have a very cool hangout for you today. I'm going to introduce our classrooms quickly, and then we'll introduce our guest. So our first classroom is, we have two classrooms together. We've got grade 1 classroom, this is Joblin, and this is Morgan, and they're from Overland Park in Kansas. Say hi, guys. Hi. Awesome group of grade 1 students. Then we have Miss Golchinsky's classroom and Miss Walburn's 3rd grade class from Watoma, Wisconsin. Can you guys say hi to us? All right, awesome group of 3rd graders there. And our 3rd group joining us is Mrs. Hawley's group. They're 3rd grades right now, and they're going to switch halfway through. We're going to have some 8th graders join, and they're from South Carolina, Charles F. Bolden Junior Elementary and Middle School. You guys wave hi. Hi. All right. Awesome groups of students. We have 2 more classes who may join us as things go on, but for now I'd like to introduce the guest of honor, Dr. Andrea Marshall. She is a manta ray scientist. She is actually the first person to get their PhD, their doctorate, in studying manta rays. So she also founded the Marine Megafauna Foundation in Mozambique, and she's just an awesome person to talk to for outreach and education about manta rays, and I'm not going to say anything else. I'm going to let her take over because she has a lot to tell you today. So, how are you?
Great. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me today. It's really exciting to be talking to you. As you can see, I'm actually, this is live from my grass hut in Mozambique, where I have one of my primary field stations. So I'm deep in the heart of Africa on the coastline, where we have the Manta Ray and Whale Shark Research Center here in Tofu Beach. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay, and hopefully you guys really enjoy the presentation I have for you tonight. Can you guys hear me? Can everyone hear me okay, you think?
Yeah, I think
okay,
I have them muted so it doesn't jump back and forth to all the different screens.
So I'm going to share my screen now so that we can figure out how to get this presentation out to you guys. So you're just going to have to let me know, Joe, when you can see it. How are we doing?
Okay, everybody wave if you can see the manta ray.
Is everyone waving?
I don't have waving.
Uh-oh.
Let me jump to a class and see. Mrs. Joblin's class, can you see the manta ray?
We see it, and then you pop back up. So it keeps coming up and going off.
Perfect. Once I stop talking, I'll go away. Okay, they can hear us.
Perfect. Okay, well, I want to talk to you guys about manta rays today. Actually, it's tonight for me, but it's today for you guys. As Joe said, I am the director of the Marine Megafauna Foundation. And our job is to save ocean giants from extinction. And we work on a lot of different species. A lot of people don't know what megafauna are, and so I'm here to explain that a little bit, which is that our goal is to actually try and save some of the most threatened ocean giants, and those include everything from dugong, as you see up in the far left corner, to things like marine turtles, whales, sharks, and things like manta rays, which is what I specialize in. My foundation was formed because there's a lot of animals in the ocean that need our help. And what we try and do is directed research and conservation to make sure that these guys are around for your kids and your grandkids, because these are really important animals to the ecosystem, and also really important animals just to protect because they're amazing. So Our foundation works all over the world. As I said to you, I'm coming to you live right now from that tiny little dot in the southern part of Africa. Is a little tiny research center called the Manta Ray and Whale Shark Research Center in southern Mozambique. Our foundation works all over the world. All of the little dots you see are the places that we work, but we focus on 3 main areas: in Africa, in Tanzania, and also here in Mozambique. So I want to talk to you today specifically about our global manta ray research program and talk to you a little bit more about manta rays because I think they're fascinating. It's what I specialize in. I've been working with these animals for the last 13 or 14 years. I fell in love with them the instant I started working on them, and even though I'm kind of a shark specialist, I now really specialize in this particular animal. I don't know if you guys know very much about rays. Rays are actually the sort of a cousin of a shark, and they're the ones that are flat, so they're a flattened type of shark. There's actually more ray species in the world than there are shark species, and I have up on the screen just a few of the different types that you have. It's really a diverse group. There's all kinds of different shapes and sizes and colors to these guys. And as I said before, there are more varieties of rays than there even are of sharks. And some of the rays are actually some of the most endangered of the shark and ray groups on the planet. So if you look at the sawfish, which is over, the middle over to the left, that's considered really the most sort of endangered shark and ray species on the planet, and it is a ray. So even though sharks get a lot of attention in the press, and you guys hear a lot about sharks, we can't forget the rays too. There's a beautiful hashtag on Twitter and whatnot that's called Rays Need Love Too, and I hope you guys end up falling in love with rays like I do, posting as many pictures and hashtagging Rays Need Love Too, because they do need a little bit more attention from us. Now, manta rays evolved from this guy. These are the stingrays. And manta rays actually evolved from this type of ray. And, stingrays, there's a lot of different varieties. The closest one to the mantas are some of these pelagic stingrays like this one called the small-eyed stingray. And you can actually see why we call it the small-eyed stingray, because if you look, you can see how tiny its eyes are compared to its body size. But one of the things that you can see about this ray is just how much it almost is starting to look like a manta ray. It swims in the ocean. It has these almost really long sort of wings like manta rays do, and its body shape looks a little bit more like a manta. But I just was kind of trying to give you a little bit of an idea of where mantas came from, but what we really want to talk about, obviously, is the actual manta rays today. So manta rays are the largest of any of the living rays on the planet. They get up to 8 meters. Now, it's a really hard concept for a lot of people to understand. That's, somewhere about, 24 feet across. But I promise you they do get that large. This is a picture of me working with some really big rays in Ecuador. This individual there is about maybe 21 feet across. So they really do get big, and swimming around with them feels like swimming around with a spaceship. Sometimes as they're over your head, it just feels like an alien spacecraft above you. But they're really gentle animals despite their size. So a lot of people get intimidated because they're so large, but in actual fact, they're really gentle giants. Now, the closest living relative to a manta ray is something called a devil ray, or a mobula ray. Now, I think these guys get a bad rap, because of their name. They're not actually mean animals at all, but they're just a smaller version of a manta. So these guys are much smaller, only a couple of feet in size, really. But they are the closest looking to the mantas around. But what do we know about mantas? That's kind of what I want to discuss with you today. When I started my work, as Joe mentioned, about 13 years ago, we really didn't know anything about mantas. The studies that I started conducting were some of the first that we'd ever started to look into in terms of this particular animal. So how far have we come? What have we learned? What do we know about this animal now? Well, one of the things that we know about mantas is it's one of the only pelagic rays, so it's one of the only rays that actually swims for a living. It never stops, it never rests, so a lot of the other rays you see kind of sitting on the seabed or taking a nap, but manta rays never sleep. They're constantly in motion. They're moving throughout the entire course of their lifetime, and that can be sort of 40 or 50 years, so they do live a really, really long time. What else do we know about manta rays? We know that just like sharks, internally, their skeleton is comprised of cartilage, so it's made up of cartilage. So that's what a manta ray looks like from the inside out. You can see its skeleton sitting on the seabed there. This was unfortunately a manta ray that was killed by some fishermen, but we watched as it decomposed and all of the little fish cleaned all of the flesh away, and that's what's left, its skeleton. But just like sharks, its skeleton is actually made up of cartilage, which is the same stuff as in the tip of your nose or in your ear. And so, you know, all rays and sharks have these really flexy cartilaginous skeletons. That's part of what makes that group particularly unique. Now, unfortunately, cartilage doesn't preserve well, so we don't have great fossil records of sharks and rays like we do for dinosaurs or we do for other types of bony fish or land animals. It's really hard to come across deposits of really great fossils of mantas or other sharks. So in order to study them, we use their teeth. And their teeth are actually quite hard, and they don't degrade very easily, so you can find them in the sand and in the sediment, and we can learn a lot about where sharks came from and where they live and what they eat based on their teeth. Now, a lot of people have asked me, well, what about mantas? Because they don't have teeth, right? But mantas do have teeth. They are located in what's called a tooth band that sits on their lower jaw. So you're looking straight down on a manta ray. You're looking straight down on it. And its tooth band goes from one side of its jaw all the way to the other side of its jaw. And if you were to blow that tooth band up with pretty high-level photography, what you'd see is tiny little embedded teeth, really tiny. They're only, you know, a millimeter or so in size. And mantas can have up to 4,000 of them, but they have teeth. And they also fall out just like sharks do periodically over time. So they're scattered all across the globe. So that's one of the ways that we've been studying, you know, where mantas live and, you know, how long they've been around. And so that's how we actually study a little bit more about sort of their history. What else do we know about manta rays? Well, we know that there are 2 different species of manta rays out there. So unlike things like whale sharks that you guys have maybe been learning about that only have a single species, mantas have 2. So this is the giant manta, and it's one of the species, and then its smaller cousin is called the reef manta, and that's what you're seeing right here. So 2 different distinct species, the reef manta, which you're seeing on top, and the giant manta at the bottom. Now, what's really exciting is that we only made this discovery back in 2009, you know, and it really took us by surprise. And I made this discovery right here in Mozambique, just a couple hundred meters from where I'm sitting, which is where the ocean is. I was diving with these animals, studying them, when I noticed that there actually are 2 different ones, and I you know, then described a second species of manta. Now, that was in 2009, and hopefully now in 2015, this year, we're going to describe a 3rd species of manta, and this is a manta that actually lives over in the Americas. This is one that lives in the Caribbean, in the Gulf of Mexico, and even on the eastern seaboard of the United States. So this is a very exciting discovery that I'm sharing with you today. It's not finalized yet, but we do expect that we're going to have a 3rd species of manta by the end of the year. Now, hopefully you guys aren't getting distracted by all this rain, but it's raining really hard in my hut right now, so hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. What else do we know about mantas? Well, a lot of people are a little, I don't know, put off by mantas or a little bit sometimes scared of mantas because they're shaped really different. You know, they don't look like a normal ray. So sometimes here's a manta coming straight at me into my camera lens, and you can see these huge projections on the front of their head. These like almost look like horns. Those are called cephalic fins or cephalic lobes. And they're able to use those, open them, curl them, fold them, put them in different directions. They help them feed. So it's nothing to be scared about. It's nothing that can hurt anyone. It's just a feature that it's almost like little hands that help direct food into their mouths. So here you can see the cephalic fins open. But if you look at the manta's body shape, it's so much different than normal rays. You can see that they actually have this huge mouth that ends at the end of their head. It's called a terminal mouth. And it's huge. It's not like a normal ray that might have a tiny mouth underneath its body. It's really large and cavernous, and I'll talk a little bit about what it eats right now. You can also see, though, that the shape of its body, it's almost like a diamond. And most rays are very round in shape, so this makes it really unique in terms of the ray group. It's definitely a departure on what the normal body shape looks like for these animals. What about its vision? Where are its eyes located? I'm going to go back and show you that if you look on either side of its mouth, you can actually see its eyes right there, and here's a close-up of one of their eyes. they actually have pretty good vision. Unlike some of the sharks, they don't have any types of eyelids. So what you can see now is you can see the manta ray almost trying to close its eyes by pulling its eyeball back into its head. And that's the only way that it can protect those eyes of it, because it doesn't actually have a lid like us. It can't close its eyes. It can only kind of retract its eyeball a little bit into a little pouch in its head. But it has incredibly good vision. They have very large eyes, and they're very inquisitive. They're always looking at you. I don't know if you can see the other eyes in this picture. The other eyes in this picture belong to a fish called a remora. So oftentimes mantas have remoras all over their body. They actually a lot of times are referred to as shark suckers, and these particular species of fish make a living by actually sucking on to other animals and hitchhiking, essentially. And so what you can see in this photo right here is that there's remoras all over the body of this manta ray. And this is what they look like close up. They're kind of slimy little animals that really just suck on and kind of go for a ride on the backs of these manta rays. What else do we know about mantas? I talked a little bit about that huge cavernous mouth that they have. The reason they have this enormous mouth is in order to feed. Manta rays are planktivores, so they actually feed on plankton like a whale would or like a whale shark would. And as you can see right here, it's opening its mouth and it's sucking in all of this water and all of this plankton. I kind of wanted to ask you guys, but I know you guys don't have audio, how much water you think a manta ray can filter?
I can turn someone on if you want.
Can you turn it on? Can I ask if anyone can take a guess of how many sort of gallons of water that these guys can filter a minute, maybe?
Absolutely. I'll go to Mrs. Golchinsky's class. We'll see if anybody knows.
All right, Paige, how many gallons of water?
3.
3. Okay, great guess. It's actually 240 gallons a minute. So that is about as much water as you would find in an average size hot tub. So that's how much water goes through a manta ray's mouth that they can filter per minute. So that's like gulping every minute an entire sort of spa or an entire hot tub worth of water as they travel around the ocean. So that's a lot of water, and the reason that they have a mouth that's designed to be able to capture this much water is because they're trying to filter out this, which is zooplankton. So as I'm sure you guys have learned in your classes, or you probably will, there's 2 types of plankton in the world. There's plant-based plankton and there's animal-based plankton. Manta rays and whale sharks and whales, they all eat the animal-based plankton called zooplankton, and that's what you see in this photo right now. And if you were to look at some of these animals close up, you would see that zooplankton can be anything from fish eggs to little types of marine mollusks to tiny little larval fish. All kinds of different things constitute plankton, and these are all the different types of animals that manta rays feed on. Now, when they feed, all the water goes into their mouth, and then it gets filtered by these specialized filter plates, and then the clean water then exits out of the gill slits that you're seeing right here. So manta rays have 5 pairs of gill slits on the bottom of their body, and that's where all of the water exits. So as it goes into their mouth, you can see this is a manta with its mouth wide open, and you can see those gill plates inside. As it goes into their mouth, the water gets filtered through what's called a branchial plate. So this is like your mom's pasta strainer. So as the water goes into their mouth, all of the little food is actually captured in these filtering plates, and then it's passed to the back of their throat. And in that top photo, you can see a black hole in the back of the manta ray's throat. That's the opening to their esophagus. And so they can eat anything that's about the size of your fist or smaller. So manta rays eat kind of small fish and all kinds of other little types of zooplankton. When they capture the food, it looks about like this. So this is what all the zooplankton looks like once all the water is drained out of it and it's super concentrated. So this is what mantas are after, and they spend most of their day actively feeding in order to be able to get enough of this food to sustain themselves. So they feed in different ways. They have really kind of 4 different types of feeding modes. One is called ram feeding, which is what also things like whale sharks employ, which is just opening their mouth and swimming in a straight line through the water. Manta rays also sometimes barrel roll when they feed. And so you can see the manta ray's mouths are open in this photo too, but instead of going straight, they actually are making somersaults back on themselves through the water column. So they're trying to stay in one place and capture the food that's sitting in one area by doing these massive somersaults to stay in one spot and capture all that food. Manta rays also do things like bottom feed, which is where they take their mouths almost like a vacuum cleaner and they suck the bottom of the ocean, all of the sand. You know, they're not after the sand, but they're after all of the little animals that live right on top of the sand. So sometimes they feed using this mode as well. One of the cool things about mantas, one of the last feeding modes I want to talk about, is cooperative feeding or group feeding, where sometimes manta rays cooperate with one another in order to capture the food most efficiently. So you can see these two manta rays are stacked on top of one another and they're feeding together. And sometimes they feed in only 2 or 3. Sometimes they feed in hundreds at a time, where you get all of these manta rays moving together almost like one single mouth. All stacked on top of one another, trying to capture that zooplankton most efficiently. So it's amazing to see how they cooperate with one another. It's amazing to see how clever these animals are by working together as a team in order to capture some of this food. And that's one of the things that I love about manta rays, is they're actually an incredibly intelligent animal. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but this is the animal that has the largest brain to body ratio of any shark or ray or any other fish species in the ocean. So this is really the king of the fish in terms of, we think, intelligence. It's very clever. And one of the things that I love about manta rays is that they're so social, not just with each other in terms of how they cooperate and interact with one another, but they're very social in terms of how they interact with us. So this is my husband who was diving with me in Indonesia earlier last year. And he is interacting with this amazing manta ray there. And one of the things that I love about this particular animal is how it comes to you. A lot of times underwater when you approach a fish, they kind of look at you a little bit and then they swim away. Manta rays are one of the few animals underwater that when they hear you, when they hear your bubbles or they feel your presence in the water, they literally come to you to have an interaction, to inspect you, to play with you. And I think that that is so fascinating, that they are intelligent enough to know that, hopefully know that we're not their enemy, and that they, you know, that we're another intelligent animal that they might want to have an interaction with. So I'm going to show you this short little video now. Hopefully you guys like it. It actually shows you how inquisitive these animals are and just how close they like to get to some divers. So this is in Ecuador. This is one of the members of my research team. And you can see this animal that probably has never seen a human before come straight in to the diver for a closer look and to inspect that person a little bit more. You can see how slow they move, how gentle they are, and just how inquisitive these animals are. I love to play with mantas in the wild because they're so intelligent. Sometimes they can have interactions where they will be playing with me for an hour or 2. Sometimes I come up to the boat to have a break and eat a banana, and I jump back in the water, and the same manta is there waiting to play with me still. So they're very playful, very cheeky. They love to test the limits of the play behavior. And it's just so much fun to be in the water with them. I enjoy studying them, but I also just enjoy being in the water with them and taking photos of them because they are so, you know, beautiful, and they're just so friendly. What else do we know about mantas? I mean, most of the stuff that I've learned about mantas and most of the work that I've done on mantas has been through observation work in inshore areas where we can find them. And most commonly we work with manta rays at things called cleaning stations. So what you can see right here, this is a photo taken in Mozambique, just down the way here. This manta has come inshore to a reef where it's being cleaned by a variety of different cleaner fish that remove anything from parasites to algal buildup, or if a shark has bit it, like you can see the back of this animal has a tiny little shark bite, maybe it'll help that wound heal. So these cleaning stations essentially are almost like car washes for mantas. You know, mantas are swimming around on the highway of the ocean, and they make these pit stops into these cleaning stations or these car washes in order to clean themselves up. Because they're in shallow water and because they're swimming very slowly and being cleaned, we can study them a little bit better. So a lot of what we know about mantas it comes from our interactions with these animals at things like cleaning stations. But what they do the rest of the time, what they do as they swim around the ocean is anyone's guess. You know, that's a place where we can't get to. We can't swim offshore and we can't go into deeper water. So it's hard for us to understand what the rest of the manta ray's life is like. So one of the things that I did to try and get around this is I started putting on advanced technology like satellite tags onto these mantas in order to figure out more about their secretive life. Where do they go? Where do they hang out? What do they get up to? And we just got amazing information back. I did a 5-year study all over the world where we were putting these tags on to different populations around the world to find out what they're up to. And it's just amazing to find out how incredible in terms of how athletic these animals are. They swim for thousands of miles in any direction, up along coastlines, in between island groups, offshore into really inhospitable areas of the high seas, you know, that you can hardly believe an animal could live. Manta rays penetrate into. Some of the most interesting stuff that we've learned is how deep they dive. So these satellite tags also capture information like the depth that the manta is in. And as we started to get the tags back and the information back, we were finding out that they were making huge dives into the darkest parts of our ocean. You know, dives of up to sort of 3,000 or like a mile or a kilometer or stuff from the surface. So I think the deepest dive was 1,400 meters from the surface, which is, you know, an exceptional, you know, depth into parts of our ocean that are really, really cold and very, very dark. We still don't know what the manta rays are doing down there, and that's part of some of the continued research that we're doing. But the point that I'm trying to make is that they do have these incredibly secretive lives. They travel into places we never imagined that they would go. They're incredibly athletic in that they're able to withstand severe habitats that we, you know, couldn't have imagined that they would be able to survive in. So we're learning stuff about these animals all of the time, really interesting information. Part of my job is really to be a conservation biologist, so it's not just to learn about these animals, but you know, the real point of conservation biology is to solve problems and save species. So all of the things that we're learning about the mantas, we're trying to pass this information on to government to try and figure out how to get better management and laws for these animals across the globe so that they can persist in the oceans, hopefully for many, many years to come. Unfortunately, it's very sad, but unfortunately manta rays are a threatened species. So at the moment they're considered vulnerable to extinction, meaning that if we don't do something to protect manta rays, there's a real chance that they're going to continue to decline in the world's oceans to the point where we might not have any more. So a lot of people are really upset by this fact because they love mantas, and they say to me, well, why are they so threatened? Well, one of the big problems with mantas is that they don't occur in large numbers. So they don't have large population sizes, not even like sharks. You know, sometimes sharks, you know, there's a lot of sharks in the ocean, or there were, and maybe, you know, their populations are declining too. But sometimes if you look at mantas, you're surprised to find that populations exist only in a couple hundred. So, you know, in Hawaii or in Japan or in a lot of the populations that we're studying, there may only be 300 individuals in that population or 500. So it's really easy, if there's any type of pressure on those animals, for those populations to decline really swiftly. Unfortunately, too, manta rays don't have very many offspring. Now, you can see this is a pregnant manta. And one of the things that I specialize is in reproductive ecology, so tracking the pregnancies of mantas and looking into this type of work. And one of the things that we're finding with mantas is they only have one baby, and sometimes only every couple of years. So they're not able to rebuild populations if they're reduced for any reason. So that's a huge reason why manta rays are actually so threatened in this day and age. One of the other things that's a particular threat to mantas is that they are social, as I talked about before. So they live in large groups. And that means that people who want to target them and do bad things to them can find them and take them out very easily because they all associate with one another. So if you were a fisherman, you could easily go in and sort of take out a large number of animals all at once, which is very, very dangerous for some manta populations. Other problems are things like unfortunately, they get really easily entangled. So because we have so many ropes and lines and anchors and things in the ocean today, you find that manta rays are getting entangled accidentally in a lot of these you know, human devices that are in our oceans, which is a huge problem. And one of the other factors that we're looking at right now, I actually have a PhD student that's working on this for me at the moment, is we find that as the oceans of the world are changing, especially as they're getting more polluted, it's affecting a lot of the animals, and manta rays are one of the animals that are deeply affected, because as you can see, manta rays feed at the surface, they feed on zooplankton, and look at all this stuff around them. It's plastic. And this is buoyant, just like, you know, like some of the zooplankton. It's kind of aggregates, or it collects at the surface. And so mantas have to try and feed amongst all of this trash in our ocean. And a lot of times they're ingesting it, and a lot of times bad things are happening to them because they're ingesting this plastic. And so this is another huge problem. So basically what we're starting to learn is that these are valuable animals, and sometimes they're being targeted, like shark fin, for certain products, and they're being sold in places like China. But this is a really unsustainable use of these animals. They're beautiful animals, and they don't have populations that can withstand behavior like this. So what we're trying to convince the world is, like, why are we using these animals unsustainably when there's so much benefit to be had, so much money to be made out of things like ecotourism? These animals are very valuable over the course of their lifetime. Manta rays might be able to generate as much as $1 million US through positive and sustainable ecotourism. You can see this diver interacting with this manta in Mexico. So we're definitely trying to convince governments that there's a much better use to these animals than using them one time and allowing fishermen to kill them. And I think we're having a huge impact, because a lot of countries are now protecting their mantas. One of the biggest countries that was fishing them, Indonesia, had declared last year that manta rays are protected throughout the entire Indonesian country. So we definitely are making some progress, and good things are happening. Tourism can really make a positive impact, not just because it generates income for developing nations that used to hunt manta rays, but we can learn a lot by coming together and trying to collect really important data. So scientists like myself can't be everywhere at the same time, but we're training tourists all around the world now to capture information about mantas and send it into a database called Manta Matcher, which you guys can all look up online afterwards if you want. Manta Matcher is the global online database for manta rays that acts very similar to Facebook, really, is how we created it. We created it to act like Facebook. So every time people see manta rays, they can upload their manta ray up onto this database. They can check to see if it's been seen before and it's already named. If it's not, we can lodge it as a new individual, and we can track the sightings of these animals over time and learn about different individuals, learn about different populations, like families or populations, and learn about the global population of mantas. It works, as I said, like the FBI fingerprint database, in that every single manta ray has a different spot pattern, as you can see along the photos along the sides of the slide. Every manta looks different. Just like you and I, our faces look different, just like our fingerprints look different. So this database is able to automatically search through all of the existing entries of mantas throughout the world and find out if your manta that you're uploading is new or if it's been seen previously. So it's a very cool site that's helping us study manta rays, not just on a local scale in the places that some of the researchers are working, but on a global scale. So it's fantastic. And all of these things we've been learning over the last sort of 10 to 15 years. I've been so fortunate as a researcher to have the support of people like National Geographic as I travel around the world to be able to study these animals in different places. It's amazing. I always tell kids, like, it's amazing in this day and age to be able to work on something and feel like you're making such a significant contribution to what we understand about a particular animal. 10 years ago, we didn't know anything about this animal. Now, 10 years later, we know so much, and we're learning how to protect it and learning how to coexist with it. It's really fantastic, and I encourage any of you guys that are interested in science to pursue it, because this is really a dream job. All the time I tell people this isn't a job. It's something I love to do. I wake up every morning loving to go to work, and it's such a privilege to be able to work on such incredible animals and really give back to try and make the ocean a better place and the world a better place. I would encourage you guys, hopefully, to learn more about mantas and learn more about sharks, obviously. I wanted to let you know about a very, very exciting show that's coming up. I've been working with the BBC, as many other scientists have, to create a new series called Sharks that's going to be premiering, I think, in May. It's going to be a 3-part series, and it's just going to be everything you could ever want to know about sharks and rays. A lot of my friends are in the show. I have a little section on manta rays that we filmed in Mexico, as you can see here, for the series. I just saw it yesterday for the first time. It's awesome, and I cannot wait for it to go live and get transmitted across the world so that all of you guys can see all of these great stories about sharks and rays, and I hope you guys will tune into that. Speaking of tuning in, if you guys want to follow some of the work that I do, please do. We have a social media presence online. You can track my work on our website, thequeenofmantas.com, or if you want to learn a little bit more about some of the other scientists in my foundation and things like whale sharks and some of the other species that we study, you can follow us on marinemegafauna.org too, and all of our social media sites. It's been really fun to chat with you about mantas today, and I'd really love if you guys have any specific questions that I haven't addressed, that I'd love to answer them now for you.
All right. Well, Andrea, thank you so much. That was awesome. So much good information. Your pictures are just phenomenal. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
You're welcome.
We do have lots of classes joining us with questions. We actually have 2 classes tuned in while you were just getting started. So let me just check in and see if Mr. Clayton's class is here.
Sorry, yes, we are. Everyone say
awesome.
Hi.
So just a quick introduction. There are 4th to 6th graders, or the MIT Beavers, at Puesta del Sol Elementary School in Victorville, California. So awesome to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
And then we have, let's see if I can turn the microphone off or on. Mrs. Martin's class has joined us. They're in Georgia. Can you hear me?
I can see them.
Yeah. Just having trouble getting their microphone on.
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, there we go. There they are. Awesome. Glad to have you here.
Okay, our kids were saying hello. Say hello, guys.
Okay. Well, let's see if I can switch over and let's get to some questions. Okay, let's go to our first graders. Mrs. Joblin's class, are you there?
Yes. Okay,
excellent.
You two stand up.
I think you've got some questions for us.
All right. Can you see? All right, there you go. Ask the question.
Why do they have stripes on their stomach? And do they all look the same?
I can answer those questions together. So as I said before, I'm not sure why they have spots on their stomach, but it's lucky that they do, because the fact that they have all of these different patterns on their stomach allows us to identify different individuals. So it's kind of handy. It's like a fingerprint, like as I said before in the presentation. So every manta has I guess let's call it a belly print on their stomachs that allows me to tell each individual apart. And so that means that they don't look all the same. I mean, generally the manta looks the same, but the spot patterning on their belly looks different, and that makes them who they are.
All right, good question. Do you have another one for us?
Okay, number 2. Who has 2? All right. Can you see them? Loud.
They look long and thin, but they were compared to a shark in a clip we viewed. How much do they weigh?
They want to know how much they weigh. How much?
Yeah. What was the first question?
We saw a video of yours, and it was compared to a shark.
Oh,
and so
yes.
They were just wanting to know the weight.
Oh, the weight. These animals can weigh several tons, so they are actually incredibly heavy animals. I think the largest one on record was something like 6,000 pounds. I mean, it's really, some of them get really big, but obviously not all of them are that big, just the really old ones. But yes, as I mentioned in my talk, like mantas are rays, so they're considered part of the shark and ray group. They're just like flattened sharks.
Okay, and I think they've got one more question for us.
Okay, Alyssa? You want to come over this way? Come on, you can come. There you go.
Hi.
Okay, there you go. You want to say your question?
What eats them? Where are they on the food chain?
Cool. Okay. Well, in terms of what eats them, not very much. Every once in a while, we see things like killer whales will eat them, but most times they just get nibbled by sharks. That's why sometimes if you look at the back end of an animal, you see tiny little shark bites, but very few sharks are big enough to actually take out a manta ray. Imagine how big they are at 21 feet, you know. It would take a really big shark to take that animal out. So sometimes sharks nibble on them, and sometimes orcas kill them every once in a while. And your question was?
It was, where are they in the food chain?
Where are they in the food chain? Well, even though manta rays are predators, they feed on sort of the lowest and the smallest animals there are in sort of the ecosystem. So they feed on the very, very bottom of the food chain. But mantas themselves are still predators. I wouldn't call them top predators, but they are still predators because they do eat other animals.
Okay, awesome questions from those grade ones. Let's, before we jump to another class, I just want to give a quick shout out to a few of the classrooms who are watching along with us today, the live stream. So we have a 2nd grade class from Momentous School in Dallas, Texas, 1st grade from Eads Elementary in Munster, Indiana, 2nd grade from Prairie Grove Elementary in Crystal Lake, Illinois. From Alexandria, Indiana, we've got Alexandria Monroe Intermediate, Mrs. Howell's class. We've got a group watching us from Mrs. Nicodem and Mrs. Jones from Jonesville Middle School in Virginia. And 1st grade class in Brookridge, Mrs. Morgan's class. So hi to everybody who's watching us. And please don't hesitate to send in questions to the event page, and we'll try to get to some of those live as well. So we'll move to Mrs. Golchinsky's and Mrs. Walburn's 3rd grade classes. How's it going over there?
Good, how are you?
Okay, I think you have some questions for us.
All right, Aubrey, stand up. Good.
How old were you when you wanted to study mantas?
That's a bit of a loaded question because I wanted to study sharks at age 5. My mom said that at age 5, I was telling people at parties or my next door neighbors that I wanted to study sharks for sure. But I didn't know that I wanted to study mantas until I moved to Africa, and I was, I think, 23 at the time. But I loved mantas ever since I started diving, and I started diving when I was 11 years old.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Where is the largest population of mantas? Logan, come. Where is
I got it. The largest population of manta, that's a great question. And you want to know why it's such a great question? It's because we've just found the largest one, which is really exciting, which is in Ecuador. And it's not even the Galapagos where most of the, amazing things are in the Pacific Ocean. It's on the mainland of Ecuador. And we found a population that's so big that it's about 10 times bigger than any other population that we've ever found. And we've already identified over 2,000 mantas in that population. So it's an awesome population.
Good question.
All right, we have one more.
Okay. Were you scared the first time you swam with mantas?
That's a good question. I think I wasn't scared. I was really shocked. I think every time someone gets in the water with a big animal, whether it's a whale or whether it's a shark or whether it's, anything that's big can be intimidating because you've never experienced something so large. Sometimes it feels like a train coming at you, some of these whale sharks and stuff. But I think it takes only a few moments, before you realize that they're gentle and that they're not going to hurt you. And so that fear, if you can call it fear, melts away almost instantly.
Thank you.
Good question.
Okay, awesome questions, guys. Let's go to the next class. So, Mrs. Hawley's group, have you changed over to the grade 8s? Can you hear us?
Yes, we hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
We can, loud and clear.
Okay.
All right, here's some questions for Andrea.
Okay, go ahead. Tiana.
What type of education does it take to become a marine biologist, and who inspired you to become one?
Great question. You know, there was two really sort of significant people that inspired my career. One of them is Dr. Sylvia Earle, who's considered the queen of the deep. She was the first woman ever to go all the way to the bottom of the ocean. She's also just a pioneering, like, woman scientist. And also a wonderful lady named Dr. Eugenie Clark, who just recently passed away a few months ago, and she was considered the shark lady of the world. Those were two of my biggest influences when I was growing up. And in terms of what it takes to become a marine scientist, you know, it takes passion is what it takes. It doesn't take much more than that. You have to have the passion and drive in order to be in this field. And, you know, I went all the way to the top. You know, I did my undergrad, my master's, my PhD. I was in university for 10 years. But I know a lot of really great marine biologists that have just undergraduate degrees or just masters. So I think it depends on how far you want to take your education. But I think the most important thing is just to have that drive, just to follow that passion and never give up no matter where it leads you. But great question.
Okay.
Thank you, Sam. And now Audrey Rose.
How can you tell the difference between a male and a female? Are there any behavioral differences?
Great question. I was going to show photos, but then there's a bunch of kids in the audience, so I thought better of it. But I will just say for you older children that you can tell the difference between males and females essentially the way you tell the difference between male and female humans. Males have male parts on their outside and females don't. So I'll just leave it at that. You can definitely tell the difference. And in terms of behavioral differences, yeah, that's a really astute question. You know, because males and females are different sizes, so the female mantas are always bigger than the male mantas. The female mantas can get even like a meter or a meter and a half bigger than the males. And because of that, they seem more confident. They seem to move with more confidence, and they seem to interact with humans, you know, more. They seem less afraid, and so you definitely have the best encounters with the big female rays than you do with the males, who are a little bit more skittish. Great question, though.
Okay. And Trey?
Miss Holly's class, we missed the first part, and we were wondering if you could go back.
No. As a class. They actually just want to know about revisiting your whole talk today.
Oh,
actually,
well.
What I can feel that one. If you go to the YouTube page, the Sharks4Kids YouTube page at the end of this Hangout, all our sessions are recorded directly to YouTube, and you can see what you missed. So you didn't actually miss anything, so you can catch it right afterwards if you want.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the awesome questions.
You're welcome.
Do you mind just turning the microphone off on your end? I don't have control of yours for some reason. Just that way we won't bounce back and forth between the two classrooms. Or be really, really quiet. That would work too. Let me see. We had Mr. Clayton's class, but we might have lost them. Let's check in. Mr. Clayton, are you still there?
Yeah, we're back.
Awesome. Do you have some questions for Andrea?
Yes, we do.
I have two questions.
Stand in front of me.
One is, how do they protect themselves from predators? Like, do they use their size and stuff, like their enormous size, to protect themselves from sharks and killer whales or stuff like that?
Great question. What's your second one?
My second one is, do you know how the babies live after they're born? Do the parents stay with them like other animals, or abandons them like sharks do?
You guys are asking great questions. Okay, in terms of the predation, I told you that manta rays like evolved from stingrays, but they're not stingrays, so they don't actually have a stinger, and they can't sting anyone. So you're quite right. It's difficult for them to defend themselves. The only way that the advantage they have is, one, their size, because as I said, there's not a lot of animals that can take down a 21-foot manta ray. But the other thing is their speed. So they have really fast burst speed, and that means that sharks can't catch up to them as they kind of like swim away really quickly. They can't sustain that speed, but they have incredible burst speed. And to answer your other question, which is also really a cool question, manta rays are like all sharks. So none of the sharks or rays that we've studied in the world have parental care. So they don't take care of their young. Their young are born and they're ready to fend for themselves, and that's the case with manta rays too. They're born at about, sort of 5 feet or so, and they're ready to go. They're ready to feed on plankton and defend themselves, and a lot of times the tiny ones get attacked by sharks, but, hopefully at least some of them survive, and obviously some of them make it to adulthood.
Good question.
Thank you. I think we have one more.
Sure.
Go ahead, Rayshawn.
How come sharks keep on attacking manta rays?
How come they attack manta rays?
Yes.
Okay, well, if you were a hungry shark and a manta ray was swimming really slowly on a cleaning station, I kind of think about it like, maybe the manta ray looks like a giant chicken McNugget with wings, right? It looks like an easy snack. And so I think the sharks know that the manta rays can't see very well behind them because they have these enormous wings and their eyes are on the front of their body, so they can't see behind them very well. And the sharks kind of just sneak up on them, and they know they're not going to eat the whole manta, but if they can get a little snack, if they can eat a little chicken McNugget, then maybe it fills their stomach for that hour or something. So they just kind of sneak attack on the mantas, but they don't really prey on them, for a living or anything like that.
I think we had one more. Sorry, someone just
Right.
Sure.
When they flap their wings, do they go faster or slower?
So
When they flap their wings?
Yeah.
Well, when they flap their wings, they're trying to accelerate. So if they're flapping their wings a lot, it means they're traveling really fast. And when they're kind of just hovering really and they're not moving their wings at all, then they're almost being stationary. They can't stop swimming. If they stop swimming, they'll sink. But sometimes they can hold their position, in the water, and they use the current a little bit just to hold them up just a little bit. And they can almost stop swimming, but they can't stop swimming.
Okay. Great questions. Thanks a lot, guys. I'm going to duck over to our event page because there's a couple classrooms who have asked questions online. So this is from Mrs. Morgan's first graders in Brookridge, and they want to know, how big is a manta's heart?
Oh, wow. You know what? I've actually personally never measured a manta's heart, but I've actually seen many. And it's really not as big as I would have expected it to be. So, when I've dissected them out, they've been maybe about half the size of my fist. And I haven't dissected some of the biggest mantas in the world's heart out, but, the ones that are average size, they're not as big as I would have thought would be needed to, pump blood through the whole animal. So they're a little bit smaller than I would have imagined anyway. They really, no one's ever asked me that question.
Good question. And then we've got a class from Hawaii who's watching, some 5th graders, and they're wondering if you've ever been to Hawaii to see the mantas.
Aloha. Of course I have. I love Hawaii. It's one of my favorite places. That's actually one of the places in the world where some of the greatest research has been done by 2 great scientists, Tim Clark and also Mark Dikos, on the Big Island of Hawaii for Tim and on Maui for Mark. And we've learned really a lot about mantas from those 2 studies. And in terms of manta diving, Hawaii rates as one of my top manta dives in the world. The night dive on the Big Island is just a fabulous sort of tourist attraction, and it's just beautiful to see manta rays swimming at night. So yeah, Hawaii is a great place for research and tourism.
All right. Awesome questions. So we have one more class following along with us. We'll touch in with Mrs. Martin and see if they have some questions for us. Mrs. Martin, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Do you have some questions for Andrea?
Sure. Okay, Maggie. Go ahead.
How stingrays sting people?
How do they sting?
How
Do they sting?
How stingrays sting people?
Okay, well, as I said before, manta rays don't sting people, but some rays do, and that's the stingray group. And in terms of how they sting people, they have a stinger in their tail. So what they do is if they get frightened, they lift their tail up, and they're able to sting either directly above them or sometimes over their head. But, you know, what we find with rays is it's almost like bees, you know. They don't want to sting anyone if they don't have to, and the only reason that they would is if they really do feel like their life is being threatened, which it usually never happens.
And how is
No, not yet. Okay, next. Say your name.
My name is Jalen.
This is Jalen.
Hi, Jalen.
Hey. How long do they live?
Oh, great question. I think I did it briefly at the beginning, but I probably glossed over it really quickly. They're actually a very long-lived animal, so they can live, by our estimation, at least 40 years, but probably more like 50 years. So not as long as whale sharks, which we know live over 100 years, but still 40 to 50 years is pretty long.
Okay, and do you have maybe one more question for us over there?
Hi, my name's James, and I got a weird question for you, right?
Sorry.
If you ask a manta ray how old it would be, would it say 25? Because is that true?
If you asked a manta ray how old it was and it said 25, would that be true? Is that the question?
Yes.
Well, listen, my biggest dream ever would be to actually talk to a manta, because as you can imagine, it takes me a really long time to actually figure out this stuff about mantas, you know, how long their pregnancies are, what they eat. And if I could interview one, that would just make life so much easier. But, you know, in terms of aging mantas, the only way that we actually have to find out how old they are is to sort of monitor their size over time, and kind of try and calculate how old they are based on that size. But I've never had a manta actually say anything, let alone how old it was.
All right. Well, that was a great question and a good answer, too, for that one. So we are hitting the limit of our hour. We've had some amazing questions. But before we go, I do want to remind everybody, on the left of your screen is a toolbar. And there's some little yellow tags there. It's called the showcase bar. And if you check that out, you can see links to the different Sharks4Kids pages, so YouTube, Google+, as well as the website where you can find all kinds of educational material and videos and interviews with marine experts. As well, I've included the link for the Marine Megafauna Foundation, so you can check out some of Andrea's work. And I will also put up a link on the event page to the Manta tracker. So I'll put that up there so you can check that out later as well. Andrea, thank you so much. That was awesome today. And,
good. Thanks, guys, for joining in.
I know you had a lot of really good role models throughout your career, and I think that you are going to be an amazing role model for so many students. So just great that you're doing this outreach with us. Thank you so much for being here today.
Good. Like I said, I'm so glad you guys joined. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you keep following the work. And if you want to know more about mantas, follow us on social media. You know, I'm one of those people that will get back to you if you guys want. So any questions, tweet them, or, you know, go on Instagram, or whatever the case is. You know, just get involved somehow in doing stuff for the ocean.
Awesome. I'm going to turn on all the microphones so the classes can say thank you and goodbye. So it's going to get kind of loud. The screens might flash around, but let's do that to finish off. So I'm turning on the microphones now.
Okay.
All right, ready?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, you guys are loud.
Well, once again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Next month we'll be announcing soon our marine scientist guest. Other than that, have a great month, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you again, Andrea.
No problem, guys. Bye.